Good morning. Welcome to the garden on this last day of summer. Can you believe it? What a great summer we've had. I hope you've also noticed while the wheel was turning in the song that was so beautifully sung, the wheels that were turning with the lights. Thank you, Ed Stockman, lighting guru. That was cool. Anyway, good morning. I'm glad you're here. Someone has said that the only constant is change, and indeed that's true. And yet, although change happens all the time, most of us push against it in some way. We don't like change. We are adverse to change, and we do our best to avoid it, but we can't. And especially in today's world, with everything moving at such a rapid pace, changes are coming at us all the time. And for the most part, I think those changes are good. You know, it's a time when things change. It's time for us to grow and evolve and mature as we move through life. If we didn't have those changes, if we didn't do that, we'd still be like a baby or a 2-year-old or even a 10-year-old. Change is just a way of life. Henri Bergson has said, "To exist is to change. To change is to mature. To mature is to go on creating oneself endlessly." And that's indeed where we are. Well, when we experience changes in our life, what that inevitably means is that we have to move away from something that has been and move towards something that is yet to be fully realized. And we're in that process in between those. That's really what the Bible passage is talking about today. Now, our passage is from Mark's Gospel. This same story also appears in Luke and in Matthew, and it's attributed to a story that Jesus told. This is how it reads. "No one uses a piece of new cloth to patch up an old coat, because the new patch will shrink and tear off some of the old cloth, making an even bigger hole. Nor does anyone pour new wine into used wineskins, because the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the skins will be ruined. Instead, new wine must be poured into fresh wineskins." Now, Jesus was basically saying that you have to, in some ways, let go of the old in order to move into the new and what's coming along whenever there's a change. And he uses two examples to try to point that out to us. The one is the example of taking an old coat, or an old garment, if you will, and a new garment, and then cutting a patch out of the new piece of clothing and putting that on the old garment. The first thing you've done is ruin the new garment, and the second thing is when you wash the old garment, that patch that's new cloth will shrink, and the hole will be bigger. So there's no point in doing that. It ruins both of them. And then the other example he gives is that of the wine stored in wineskin, which was what people did in those days. Now, what happens when wine is stored in a skin and that skin's used and reused is that it gets old and hard and brittle. And if you pour the wine in there, it can't handle the fermentation process of the wine, and it will break or crack, and the wine will all be lost. And we wouldn't want that to happen, would we? And so it's important to use a new wineskin, one that has more elasticity on it and can accommodate the fermentation process. So the point that Jesus is trying to make is that we have to be willing to let go of the old and move into the new, and to be open to what comes to us, because we will experience new kinds of possibilities, new kinds of opportunities, new endeavors, new ventures, and it's a way for us to grow and expand as we go through these changes and transitions. I suppose the expert, or one of the experts at least, when it comes to change and transition is William Bridges, who's written several books. He talks about change both on an individual level as well as on an organizational level too. And the book that I guess I like best of his is called The Way of Transition, where he talks about some of the transitions in his own life and uses some of the knowledge that he's gained there. And as he talks about change and transitions, he suggests several different exercises that we might try in order to begin to understand the changes that we've already gone through in life. One that I particularly like is his suggestion that we might think about writing our autobiography. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever done that or not, but when I was on my renewal leave in, I think, 2003, I was a part of that time was spent exploring my roots, where I begun, and that stories. And I started writing the stories of my early days in life because I thought it might be something that our daughter would be interested in. I don't know that she was, but I decided to write it. And what I discovered is that when you think back to that time, it causes you to reflect on it in a way that is different than the way we sometimes think about that. And we also see things that we can't see when things are unfolding in front of us. Hindsight is 20/20, as they say. And we can see things that we didn't understand or we couldn't understand that lay ahead of us or that were going on at the time. And the other thing that Bridges says is that if we're going to write our autobiography, he encourages us not to begin writing with page 1. He suggests that we start with the table of contents and title the chapters that we will have in our lives. And he also suggests that we not use some boring title like My Life 2000 to 2010. It doesn't inspire anyone to want to read what you're talking about. And so he says that what we should try to do is capture the spirit, the heart, the life of what was going on during whatever experiences we're trying to write about. And I suppose one of the things we'll have to figure out if we write our autobiography is how many chapters we would put in it. Now, I suppose that might have something to do with the number of years we've lived or are living when we write, but not necessarily, because I know some people who are quite young who have had a lot of different kinds of experiences and transitions and changes in their lives, and they'd have many, many chapters. And some of us may think we could write our life story in one chapter, and that's all it would take. But then the other thing Bridges says is after we do our writing is to reflect on what we've written there, to see what things cluster together, kind of pull together, some patterns, some trends that seem to happen in one way or another, and to try to comprehend what was going on in those particular times. And they're not necessarily chronological. They're things that we see maybe re-emerging from time to time. Bridges writes this: the form should do justice to the important life transitions you have been through, the worlds you have lived in, the identities you have embraced, and the realities you have experienced. Well, if we were to actually do that exercise, I think we would be able to pretty clearly identify the transition periods in our own life. We would see them. And we would also understand that transition is different from change, that they're not the same thing. A new boss is a change. Moving from one house to a different house is a change. Having a new baby is a change. Transition tends to be more psychological and emotional than it is situational, although it could be prompted by a situation happening. Bridges defines transition as this: it's the process of letting go of the way things used to be and then taking hold of the way they subsequently become. Now, transitions happen at numerous times in the course of our lifetime, and we need to be, it helps if we're aware of what's going on. But the reality is, between the time of letting go and the time of embracing the new thing, there's sort of this crazy time that I guess all you can call it is the in-between time, where lots of stuff is happening that we can't always understand and can't explain. And there are lots of emotions that kind of rage through us at that time. Anatole France said, all changes, even the most longed for, have their melancholy, for what we leave behind us is a part of ourselves. We must die to one life before we can enter another. Well, along those lines, I have been thinking a lot about the garden and where we are in our life. And, we just finished celebrating our 19th birthday. We're officially launched into our 20th year, which we're calling the Year of the Garden. And we're thinking about the garden growth plan. What will the garden look like 20 years from now? I think I can guarantee you of one thing, and that is the heart of the garden will not change. That is the DNA of who we are that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks will hold solid and steady. But things will change inevitably. They can't be the same 20 years from now as they are today. And so we need to figure out what that might look like as we move down the road with as limited knowledge as we have. It's helpful, I think, if we understand the life cycle, both our own personal life cycle and the life cycle of any organization. Bridges, again, defines this. He says that any organization, any individual starts at the very beginning with an idea, a dream, and there's excitement around it. And then there's the energy that comes from launching that dream and turning it into reality. There's the process of organizing the dream that comes into being, and then you arrive at the point where you make it happen. Yeah, kind of we're there, we've gotten there. But then he says that's kind of pivotal point in an organization or in our life, because there are probably one of two ways we could go. We can either begin to institutionalize what we've started, to make it rigid, to make it set, to make it solid and firm. And he says, in which case, it usually amounts to our closing in and closing inward and eventually dying. Well, nobody wants to see that happen. The other alternative is recapturing those first three phases, that redreaming the dream, relaunching the whole thing, and actually, doing the organization that we need to do to make it happen. That's where the energy and creativity comes from. Well, that's where I think we are as the garden. We're at the point of trying to recapture the dream, redream the dream, and then get ready to launch into this new future that lies ahead of us. And that's where you come in. Because we wouldn't be the garden without gardeners. And because you're here helps create the garden that is. And so you may see on your table some cards, or at least you should. There are some we can get to you if you don't have them, that have the new logo of the garden that we're just beginning to unfold, and the words next chapter on them. And we're asking you to share what you see in the next chapter. What will happen during that time? What are ideas that you would like to see come into being in the next 20 years that lie ahead of us? And in just a minute, Troy will play about a minute's worth of music or so, and we'll just ask you to think about it, to use your ideas, your insights, your particular passions, and to just share with us what you see coming down the road. What might the next 20 years look like in our chapter, or what might the next 5 years look like, whatever you want to say. And would you write those and share with us? And so I want, as we talked last week, dream big. Well, as I said, I think that's exactly where the garden is. It's looking for capturing the new dream, the new future, and creating what that future is going to be. And one thing is for sure, things will be different. Things will change. They must change, or the alternative is death. And I wouldn't want that, and I think some of you probably would not like that either. So I think it's important that we think about what it takes to move forward trusting God to lead us in the right way, and also to trust that we will stand clear on our values and live true to our vision and mission that we have. But it's likely that I will not be a part of that future. As I was trying to figure out how to share this with you, I thought of an analogy, and it was that of Moses leading the people of Israel out of bondage in Egypt and into the wilderness experience, and then standing on the brink of seeing the promised land. But he was not the one to lead them to that promised land. He would be succeeded by a new leader. Well, I'm approaching that time in my life. It seems incredible that these 20 years almost of the garden have flown by, and retirement is approaching. It is my hope that I will be able, and dream and plan, that I will be able to retire next year after our 20th anniversary, after our 20th celebration, probably by the end of September at that time. This is a whole new place. It's a new place for me to be. It's a new place for the garden to be. And there are very capable people who are leading us into that period of time. Our leadership team of the garden has already had lots of prayer, lots of discussion, lots of conversations about what the future might hold for us and future directions for us to go. And I know you can trust them. They are such loving, dedicated people, and they want only the best for the garden. And I thought it would be important for you to know who they are. And so they are, a lot of them are here this service. So as I call your names, would you stand, please? And then I want to give them a big round of applause after they've all stood for all the work they've already done and the work they'll continue to be doing. Mike Hurdle, who's leading the team, Bob Blake, Rob French, Marilyn Berger's not here, Mike Ransom, Betty Ellison, Sue Matchett, Beth Freed. Let's thank them. And thank you for hanging in there 3 services. Appreciate it. Some of us do that all the time, you know. But anyway, I'm thankful for you being here. They're going to hang around a little bit longer after the service. So if you have concerns or suggestions or ideas that you'd like to share with them, they're more than willing to listen to them, and they will compile those and share those along. I think some of them will also be able to be at the pitch-in next week to help on our discussion and see where we go down the road. And so, you know, that's it. That's what you have. That's where we're going in the future, or what's happening in the future. And I know with these folks at the helm of it, and with God's guidance and trusting God, and with all of you, we will make it. I'm asking you to make a commitment to be here as much as you can possibly be here, to continue to support the garden with your time, with your financial gifts, and with your prayers, because we need those prayers now and into the future. So that's it, a little peek into the next chapter of the garden. Long live the garden.